done this yet, I want to say hello to our church family out there in Idaho. God bless you. Glad you guys are with us this morning. And today, we've got a young man who I met several years ago, and he is a champion in the area of life. And he's one of those guys where, you know, the Bible says iron sharpens iron. Also, Hebrews chapter 10 tells us not to neglect the assembling of ourselves together as is the manner of some, but rather we do what? We spur one another on towards love and good works, especially as we see the day, that's capital D, the day approaching. That's the return of Jesus Christ. And as we know we're getting closer and closer to that, we should be spurring each other on. And that's what this man does in my life. He spurs me on. He gets me excited. You know, it's important to encourage one another and really challenge each other to be involved and be engaged. There's a lot of problems in our nation right now. We want to be a part of the solution. Would you please welcome up my friend Seth Gruber?
Good morning, church. Such an honor to be back at 412. It's not Murrieta anymore, though. I have to call it Temecula Valley. Did I get it right? Okay. I don't know why Tim thought it was a good idea to bring me out in 2021. Full lockdown. Everything's horrible. Fauci ouchies just pouring out of the ceiling. All of Murrieta and Temecula having debates about whether to lynch Pastor Tim or give him an award. You know, I mean, like, that's how you know a good leader, by the way, is like they have a ton of people that love them and a ton of people that hate them. And I always like making friendships with the guys who have all the right enemies, actually. And so Pastor Tim and I kind of became friends, forged in the fight, you know, when it was like, well, you know, you can go to a strip club and you can go to the abortion mill and kill your kid, and also you can go to Costco and Sam's Club. But if you gather in your church at 50% capacity, you're a granny killer and a super spreader. So remember that? It was like everyone hated 2020. And then this guy named Pastor Jack Hibbs, I don't know why, he decided to give a 29-year-old the pulpit in October of 2020. And I was like, it's Pastor Jack Hibbs, oh my God. And thanks to Pastor Jack, my calling and ministry and just the fire in my belly for, I don't know, like, don't kill the babies. And maybe the church should, like, do something about that. That calling just exploded, and that's how I met Pastor Tim Thompson. And later we moved our family to Godspeak Calvary Chapel, actually, from San Clemente to Rob McCoy, the guy who took his tie off on a Sunday morning and spun it around his head and said, we're a strip club, so we're an essential business. Essential. And so, my pastor, Rob McCoy, went viral for that. Fox played it and everything. It was like, you know. So. I love it when the jokes write themselves. Like, you know, it's like my friends at the Babylon Bee, they're like, we don't even have to work hard to write satire anymore. Like, it just writes itself. And so, anyways, it's like we're living in evil days, but at the same time, like, you will lose your mind if you just dwell on all of the evil all the time without also celebrating the hope in the risen Christ and also laughing at evil and stupidity and just being like, the emperor is naked. He has no clothes. And y'all are thinking it. Maybe someone should say it. So anyways, I kind of enjoy being in the culture war because sometimes, you know, you just get a kick out of it, you know. So anyways, good to be back at 412 Church. If you're new and you're like, who's this weirdo? Sorry, you're either going to really like me or really hate me in the next few minutes. I'm a weird, intellectual ADHD homeschool kid raised in Whittier, California. Whittier, they sold shirts when I was growing up in Whittier. It said, Whittier, where the girls are prettier. And I was like, So I married a Midwest girl, and then in 2022, we were having our third baby, and we moved to Kansas to be closer to her family. And so I didn't leave the battle. I didn't flee. I actually loved living behind enemy lines in California, but now we're in Kansas with the family. So we just did a huge event yesterday at Calvary Chapel Downey. I don't know if you know Pastor Art Reyes. Of course, it was Pastor Jeff Johnson's church, Calvary Chapel Downey, who I got to know a little bit before he went home to be with Jesus a couple years ago. And we did a big event yesterday called The Last Stand. with my ministry, the White Rose Resistance. We had like Steve Dace, David Harris Jr., Riley Gaines, Alex Clark, Pastor Jack Hibbs, Victor Marks, 10th Avenue North, Kim Walker Smith, I don't know, and like 10 others. And we're declaring that June is Life Month. It's not Pride Month. And by the way, June is Life Month, not because I say so, but because Jesus says so. And now wait, let me tell you what I mean by that. I'm not saying, thus saith the Lord. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I can't show you where it says that here, okay? But this incredible thing happened 3 years ago. Actually, this month, June, is the 3-year anniversary of the launch of my ministry, the White Rose Resistance. We're now the fastest growing pro-life organization in America, and probably engaging and mobilizing believers at like the local church, not another sexy, cool branded, well-funded 501c3 nonprofit, but like the local church. I know I lead a nonprofit, so it sounds weird to demean them, but I'm saying like, actually, nonprofits need to they need to not be cool anymore. What needs to be cool is the local church. Amen. Stop waiting for other people to do the job that we're called to do locally when evil shows up, to stand for righteousness, to protect the babies, to show up against the agenda to sexualize children. So many things that Pastor Tim and the congregation here has been standing against. But something incredible happened 3 years ago. Something we were told by our theological and political betters would never happen, right? And a lot of people had good reason for thinking that, like the Supreme Court, with John Roberts, that idiot, always betraying the conservative cause anytime he can have a chance to do so. I understood the pessimistic nature of not thinking Roe versus Wade was going to get overturned, but it stinking did. In a 5-4 decision, Roe versus Wade got overturned just before the 50-year anniversary of that Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy in all 50 states for any reason or no reason at all and funded by the taxpayer. And on June 24th, so 2 days from now, 2022, Roe versus Wade got overturned. Now, the battle is more local now than ever before. You understand this, right? Like, you're a super, Holy Spirit-pilled congregation. You understand how this works. Overturning Roe didn't end abortion. In fact, more babies were killed in 2023 in that 12-month period than had been killed at an annual rate for over 10 years. So, by the way, that tells you how spiritual this is, right? You take away even a little bit of the illusion of killing babies, and Americans got more bloodthirsty. Roe versus Wade just sent it back to the states. So now California, I think it was in 2022, they codified abortion through point of birth into the California state constitution. So that's a constitutional right in California now. And other states have moved to nearly ban it, but it's now a state-level battle. Okay? So anyways, what was incredible about that day, and I've been saying this for 3 years, and I'm just going to keep saying it because it's evidence of providence, and it's evidence that the Lion of the tribe of Judah is on the move, that Aslan has landed. So watch this story. This is going to rip your face off. It's going to blow your mind, all right? Holy Spirit fall. June 24th. But do you guys know that there's such a thing as a Christian calendar? As Christian festivals, high holy days? There's like 5 people. So let me indict myself into this accusation. Let's all agree, okay? Are you ready? We suck at the church calendar. Is he a Catholic or an Orthodox? No, I'm not. Okay? I'm a Protestant evangelical raised in Southern California. But listen, it's good to remember what God did, how he moved then, and how he can move again. That's what the Christian festivals and high holy days were about. Right? We used to build altars, stones of remembrance. What's the point of that? Well, God delivered his people. He did something incredible. This was a turning point in human history. So let's create a high holy day and celebrate it once a year to remember what God did on that day. Right? This whole idea of Christian festivals and feasts. And because I was like, weird homeschool kid, back when like all homeschool kids were weird, like today they're super cool because they can answer the question, what is a woman? So like, but like, in the mid-90s, when I was being homeschooled in Southern California, the whole thing about homeschool kids being weird and socially awkward, there was a little bit of truth to that. And sometimes they were the sheltering parents who were more afraid of the world They weren't homeschooling their kids to make them into little dragon slayers to go tear down, Asherah poles. They were doing it because they feared the world and wanted to remove. Some of that was true, right? But now, like after Fauci ouchies and shutdowns and COVID in 2020, did you know homeschooling exploded by like 200, 300% or something crazy like that? So anyways, now the homeschoolers are cool again. But so my mom had to celebrate those Christian festivals and feasts. It's a part of our family faith together. And so one of those, okay, after I've just shellacked you for not knowing them, it's okay, most people don't. One of them is every June 24th, the day that Roe versus Wade got overturned. It's called the Nativity of St. John the Baptist. Okay. What is that? It's when Christians celebrate and remember Mary going to visit her cousin Elizabeth. And when she goes to visit her cousin Elizabeth, the prenatal John the Baptist, little voice in the wilderness, but a fetus, starts doing backflips in the uterus. Because he recognizes the humanity and divinity of his prenatal deity, second member of the Trinity, God-man, who entered human history in a uterus to redeem mankind from their sins, the greatest former fetus who has ever existed, who predicted and pulled off his own resurrection, who chose to identify with you from your most vulnerable stage, the prenatal stage, and didn't enter human history as a 30-year-old fully adult male, but entered human history as a fetus. Fetus is the Latin word for offspring or small child. So when someone tells you it's not a baby, it's a fetus, you can go, you're right, it is an offspring and a small child. That's very good use of the Latin language that we used to call baby. Good job. And so the second member of the Trinity, who was in perfect union with the Trinity when there was nothing and darkness was hovering over the face of the water, who breathed out the stinking Milky Way, but then created you in his own image. That creator, Psalm 139, fearfully and wonderfully made, knit you together in your mother's womb, your frame was not hidden from me when you were woven together in the dark of the earth. My eyes saw your unformed substance before any of them came to be. You're like, man, I'm going to homeschool my kids too. So that second member of the Trinity who is now in a uterus, but because God knit life together in the womb, and Trinitarian theology is actually Jesus is fully God and fully human. So he didn't become fully God and fully human from the moment of birth, because there's no fetus fairy that sprinkles magical personhood conferring fairy dust on the child as it exits the birth canal. It's not a magical birth canal that confers personhood. And so if Christ was fully God and fully human, he was fully God and fully human from the moment of conception. That's following the science. Every pro-abortion leader will tell you. I could quote you abortionists, Planned Parenthood presidents, if you'd like, who have all said openly, we know human life begins at the moment of conception. They just don't think the baby has any value, but we know when human life begins, it begins at the moment of conception. So the second member of the Trinity, prenatal deity God-man, who once breathed out the Milky Way, is now knitting the prenatal John the Baptist together in the womb, while the second member of the Trinity is himself in another womb, in the same room, while their cousins are sipping back on tea and celebrating what God's doing in their individual uteruses, which means that the second member of the Trinity is knitting himself together in the womb of a woman whose uterus he once knit together when he knit together Mary in the womb of Mary's mother. Amen. So that's called the incarnation. Have you ever heard of it? Okay, it goes by another name, Christianity. That's the arrival of the long prophesied and awaited Savior. I've been reading through the New Testament again, just the first 4 chapters of Matthew, it's fulfilled, 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 fulfilled. You read it, it's this was done so that what was written in Isaiah may be fulfilled, 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 fulfilled. Here's the arrival of the long prophesied God-man, the Savior that enters human history in a uterus to redeem mankind from their sins. That's the nativity of St. John the Baptist. Are you stinking kidding me? Somebody slap me in the face. The death sentence of unborn babies, Roe versus Wade, got overturned on the day in the church calendar when we remember 2 unborn babies doing uterus backflips, one of whom is God. Wow, what are the chances? Chalk it up to another coinkydink. June 24th. Oh, and then that evening, the stars and planets started aligning. Now listen, pause before you're like, Pastor Tim, this weirdo's telling us to read the stars. Some weird Christian science pagan stuff. Not what I'm saying. Okay, don't get all weird Beth Moore on me. Don't start oh, sorry. Don't start blending weird paganism with Christianity. I really get myself in trouble today. Don't buy Beth Moore books anymore. She's a pro-abortion Democrat, okay? So, I'm not saying read the stars, but there was a planetary alignment in the night sky. Planetary alignments happen, they're pretty rare. I think the last one was 2000 or 2001, so 2022, about 20 years since the last planetary alignment. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, and one other, all lined up in the night sky, visible to the stargazer by the naked eye. It's like, whoa, pretty cool, right? And a photo went viral of this planetary alignment by an astrophotographer, so someone who takes pictures of space. And this picture captured, you could see all 5 planets, and it's super bright, right? And they're lined up like this line. And in this one photo went viral on the internet, all around the world. This thing had been shared millions of times. Super beautiful, super cool. And the name of the astrophotographer who took the photo of the viral planetary alignment on June 24th in the evening after sunset on the same day that Roe versus Wade got overturned, his name was Wright Dobbs. Thank you for the 3 gentlemen that laughed and follow politics. The name of the Supreme Court decision that had overturned Roe versus Wade on June 24, 2022 was called Dobbs. D-O-B-B-S. This full name is Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, but if you're super into politics, everyone just calls it Dobbs, the Dobbs decision. Okay, I don't even know anyone with the last name Dobbs, much less an astrophotographer. And the dude's name is D-O-B-B-S. And his name's on the bottom of the photo that goes viral all across the internet of the planetary line. And his first name, Wright. Wright Dobbs. Wright. Dobbs, this morning, Wright. Dobbs Wright. The dude, what? That's literally his name. Wright Dobbs is his name. Am I the only one that thinks this is like wild, weird? Okay. So listen, Jesus said, it's a wicked generation that seeks for signs and wonders. But as one Catholic priest, George Rutler, once said, it's a stupid generation who ignores signs and wonders. So I'm not asking you to be like, what are the stars saying today? Don't get all weird on me. But when signs and wonders slap you in the face, you can just go, oh, wow, maybe the Lion of the tribe of Judah is on the move. Like maybe Aslan has landed. Sorry, more homeschool Narnia jokes. If we would just read, by the way, all the dead authors of Christendom, we'd be a lot better off in the church, by the way. That's because Psalm 88, verse, I forgot, says, righteousness cannot be done in a land of forgetfulness. Like all of human history is divided between like effectual doers and forgetful hearers. Right? And we've forgotten who we are, the great legacy of Christian resistance that the church has had for 2,000 years against basically all the same evils that we're facing today. So June is Life Month, not because Seth says so, but because Jesus basically said so. I'm going to overturn the dead baby decision on the day when you celebrate 2 unborn babies, one of whom is me, and then I'm going to let a planetary alignment line up, and the guy who's going to take the photo is going to have the same name as the decision that overturned Roe versus Wade, and he's going to say, right. Goodness gracious. Have you heard it said that Providence is when God winks? That's a good one, huh? Providence is when God winks, as if to say, hello, I'm still here. Do you believe God still intervenes in the affairs of men? I do, and sometimes he shows it, slaps you right in the face with it, and it's a moment, it's a time when we get to choose, are we going to join our king on the field of battle? And so what are we talking about? I mean, we're talking about the evilest things you can imagine. Like, I don't want to be that guy that's like, my issue is the most important one, but in a way it is. And what I mean by that is they won't define a baby, therefore they won't protect them. They won't define marriage, therefore they won't protect it. They won't define a woman, therefore they won't protect them. Pay attention. Like this was always a war against reality itself. Like we actually can know what a baby is and what a human is. We actually can know what marriage is. We actually can know what a man and a woman is. And so I actually believe that most of the problems we're facing in our country can be traced back to the church's initial tolerance of child killing, of baby killing, of abortion. It's kind of like when Gideon is hiding out in a mountain cave like a pansy in Judges 6. This is my, commentary version. And the Midianites are oppressing the Israelites in Judges 6 because they have Bernie Sanders' democratic socialism. So that, no, I'm serious. It says that the Israelites thresh their wheat, and it says the Midianites, they just come and take it. But it's democratic socialism. I've been told that's much better. It's like icing on a turd. Somehow it's like, I'm still thinking through it, but it's democratic socialism. And so you make, we take. That's a great definition for socialism. Churchill said socialism is the gospel of envy and the creed of ignorance. And so Gideon's in a wine press or a mountain cave, like a pansy, because his own people are being robbed in broad daylight. But it says he's threshing his own wheat up in the hills to keep it for himself. Okay. The angel of the Lord appears to Gideon and says, "Mighty man of valor." But you're not, really not a mighty man of valor. You're kind of a pansy. But he reminds him of his identity and who he is. And he cooks God a meal as a sacrifice, and the angel of the Lord lights it on fire. Gideon freaks out. He goes, "Okay, you're God. I'll shut up." And then it says, "And that same night, the angel of the Lord said, 'Gideon, walk out of this cave. And you know those Asherah poles? I want you to chop them up. And then you know those Baal statues? I want you to rip them down. And then here's what I want you to do. I want you to put it in a big pile and light it on fire as a sacrifice to your God.'" It's like, wow, so much for pluralism. No, you didn't get, okay. Well, I'll get you there. Because your father really likes the smell of burning demon flesh. So go rip down the altars that represent the pagan religion that's ruling over you. Just tear it all down, actually, and light it on fire. Well, that's not very tolerant. Who's learned that there's no such thing as moral neutrality? What you tolerate, you'll eventually accept. What you accept, you'll eventually be asked to celebrate. And what you celebrate, you'll eventually be forced to participate in. Okay. We had a friend of mine, Andrew Cedra. He's like the only pastor in the country of Australia that has enough testicular fortitude to preach the full counsel of God against the demonic ideologies of the day. There's like maybe one or two other churches in the entire country of Australia. They're at the participation point now. Tolerance, acceptance, celebration, participation. I just want to tell you that's how it always goes when Christians and those who know the truth don't stand up against wickedness. It never stays at tolerance. By the way, because I study the weird sexual revolutionary theorists and activists and writers of the early 20th century, some of you actually remember when it was like, well, actually, we just want to be able to have like gay sex, because that was illegal at one point in America. But we just want to tolerate that. Like, we're not asking for marriage. Remember, these were the arguments? We just want to be able to do that legally in the privacy of our own bedrooms. How does it affect you what we do in our own bed? Does anyone who's old enough to remember that was kind of the initial, that's, by the way, that's all we want, just tolerate that. Well, did it stay there? Okay, now we're at the point where it's like, if Christian or Catholic orphan or adoption agencies won't place children with two mommies or two daddies, then they're being shut down and sued for discrimination around the... Okay, so how quickly did that... Do you see what I'm saying? Okay. In Australia, in Sydney, there was a Catholic hospital in Sydney that would not perform abortions because they have this crazy belief called the sanctity of human life, and you shouldn't slaughter children in the name of radical feminism. And so guess what? Because they wouldn't perform abortions, the socialist government of Australia took over the hospital. That's communism. The state now runs that hospital, and guess what the first action that they did on a Sunday morning when they took it from the Catholics? They brought a tractor and tore down the cross that was in front of the Catholic hospital as a reminder of who we really worship. So anyways, I could actually go on, oh gosh, that's the time. I could go on for another 40 minutes on just that, but my point is it always goes from tolerance to acceptance to celebration to participation. And why is that? It's because all human conflict is ultimately theological. All human conflict is ultimately theological. All of the different arguments that arise between parties of men eventually elevate to transcendental morals and a completely different worldview. By the way, did you know in the 60s or 70s, the United States government officially declared humanism as a religion? Yeah, secular humanism? Yeah. As a religion. Why? Because it operates like one. And it has answers to all of the eternal questions. They just answer them a lot differently than you and I do. Okay. What did Schaeffer say? Humanism is the placing of man at the center of all things and making him the measure of all things. In other words, For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods. You just become your own God. Okay, that's just humanism. That's just another religion. Okay, it's Satan's religion. It has many different names. But by the way, did you know that when Eve ate the apple, that's the first woke story? Wokeism doesn't go back to Antonio Gramsci. It goes back to the garden, actually. Because what does wokeism say? You can't see reality for what it really is. Your eyes are closed. But if you get woke, then you'll see what we see. You'll see the invisible systems of oppression, and you're like, well, what systems of oppression? They're like Christian nationalism, and you're like, what's Christian nationalism? Not killing babies. Okay, well that's not. Everyone believed that in both political parties like 50 years ago. This is how, by the way, I can prove to you that this is not political. This is a theological and spiritual fight. Watch this. Will you join me in a DeLorean? And let's go in a time machine back to the 1950s. By the way, some of the Back to the Future was filmed at my alma mater, Whittier High School, so I used to walk by where they filmed that. Anyways, so let's go back to the 1950s. Ready for this one? We're in the 1950s. Every Democrat's pro-life, except for like a couple weirdos, and the Democrat Party was like, screw you, you're a horrible Democrat, because you're pro-choice. The entire Democrat Party was pro-life in the 50s. If you had said, we need gay marriage, every Democrat in the 1950s would go, huh? If you were like, yeah, marriage equality, they'd be like, huh? They're like, gay marriage. I could show you clips of Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton from 02 and 04, saying, can we stop talking about the gay marriage debate? Marriage is a man and a woman. I'm tired about talking about this. The state has decided we have the Protection of Marriage Act. Gays can't get married. It's not a thing. It's a man and a woman. I just played this on my show a few months ago, my podcast, the Seth Gruber Show. Biden, back when he knew his name, and Hillary Clinton saying marriage is a man and a woman. Stop asking me that question. That was 2004. So in the 50s, every Democrat says, what's gay marriage? They would have been like, that's like saying, I support the right of squares to be circles. Like, 1950s, every Democrat would go, gender theory, what the heck is that? If you said, I'm trapped in the wrong body, I'm not my body, the thing that I am is not a body, this body's just a vessel for the real me, which is this gender identity that you can't see or touch, and it's fluid, so I don't know what I am today. They would have been like, huh? What's my point? My point is that neither political party thought these issues were political just a few decades ago. They would have been like, no, we don't touch that. That's the family. We don't touch marriage and family, sanctity of life. Those are eternal truths. And for most of human history, those were the church's issues. We held the line on marriage. We reversed laws that allowed the sexualization of women and children. We passed laws to end infanticide and child abandonment and exposure. We were the first sidewalk counselors in the first century when exposure, that's the abandoning of infants on trash heaps if you don't want them, was legal and respectable in ancient Rome. And so guess who came along to watch behind the bushes to see if any ancient Romans put their infants on trash heaps? The first century church, who would then rescue those infants who were placed on trash heaps because maybe they were the wrong gender or they had a cleft lip, and they would adopt that child into a Christian home and raise them in the fear and admonition of the Lord. The church, the pro-life movement used to go by another name. The pro-life movement used to go by another name. Ready? Christendom. Christendom. Before there was a marriage debate, before there was a pro-life abortion fight, there was the church locally holding the line, going to the entire world and turning cultures right side up. Well, you think it's okay to throw a widow on a funeral pyre and burn her to death? Yeah, we're gonna reverse that. Oh, you Aztec think it's okay to rip the hearts out of your local tribes? Have you seen, what's that film called? Yeah. Rip their hearts out and sacrifice it to Huitzilopochtli, the Aztec sun god, and kick the bodies of your victims down the steps of the Temple Mayor at Tenochtitlan in 1484. And they call that colonialism now. It's like, yeah, Christians found people slaughtering people and ripping their hearts out, and they said, stop that! If that's colonialism, I want more. The church went to the entire world and started changing cultures because they had this belief that human beings have a sanctity of life. They're valuable. The first victims of secular progressivism, which is really just neopaganism, have always been women and children. Women and children are the first victims of the secular progressive moral revolution. If that sounds weird, let me prove it to you. If you have your daughter in a public high school in America, certainly in California in 2025, they might have to watch a dude take off his clothes in the locker room after a swim meet or a soccer game. Why? Because of secular progressivism, this radical egalitarianism that wants everyone equal, including men and women. 70 million babies have been murdered in the womb since 1970 in only America alone. Last year, 630,000 of those children had their bodies flushed down toilets. Did you know this, the abortion pill? Did you know 63% of abortions are no longer surgical instruments? They're a medication abortion that you finish at home. Did you know that? 63%. So 630,000 babies last year in 2024, that abortion was finished in the bathroom at home, and the box tells the mothers, don't look and flush. So guess what? A new study just came out. There is mifepristone and aborted fetal tissue showing up in the water that we drink in California and across the country. No, I'm not joking. I was in a film that my friend Robbie and Landon Starbuck put together out of Nashville. It's called The War on Children. It's like an hour and 50 minutes, or just over 2 hours. It's hard viewing, probably not appropriate for like under 12-year-olds, but you can go to thewharonchildren.com. I'm in the film as the expert on Alfred Kinsey. 9 minutes left. No time to get into that right now. But there's a mom in that documentary who's a California native, and she tells her story. This happened in California 2.5 years ago. Her daughter, teenager, minor, California, thinks that she's a boy, starts to be socially transitioned at school without her mother's knowledge, begins to dress as a boy, be called a boy's name. The school then decides that her mother is a mental health risk and trauma risk to her own daughter because they don't think that the mother will be gender affirming of calling this teenage girl now a boy name. So the state of California puts a teenage minor in a state-funded, tax-funded facility to keep her from her dangerous mother. And this mother did not know where her own daughter was. So we have a phrase for that now. It's called trans youth trafficking or kidnapping. So the state of California kidnapped a minor from their own parent because that parent believes what every Democrat believed in 2009. That there are only men and women. Ooh. Eventually, the daughter called her mom on the phone, said, I'm scared, I want to come home. She's like, whoa, I didn't know where you were, I'm freaking out. The next day, that teenage daughter walked in front of a train and killed herself in the state of California. So I could go on for another 40 minutes and give you examples. What's my point? Who are the first victims of neopaganism, otherwise called secular liberalism or progressivism? Women and children. Always. But the first fruits of revival for 2,000 years of church history, one of the first evidences of a real revival is a concern for and protection of women and children. One of the first fruits that real revival produces is the church begins to say, it's not just about Jesus is my boyfriend, personal relationship with Jesus in my heart, but that because of what Christ did on the cross is true, and I can have forgiveness of sins from the God-man who entered human history and took my punishment, I can't stay silent when the young and the vulnerable and the weak are abused and taken for granted and mistreated and murdered. It's one of the first fruits that real revival produces is the church doesn't keep their spiritual renewal within the sanctuary, but they take it out to the very ends of the world and they correct evil and oppression and they protect the young. That's the heritage of our faith. So when I look at America and I see women and children starting to be abused and endangered again, I think it means we're going back to Neopaganism. And the church has been asleep in the light because we've forgotten who we are and what our great calling is. This is why Brian Broderson at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa is full critical race theorist now, post the black square, shut down your church. He can't fill one service now. Now, God doesn't care about numbers, he cares about faithfulness. But he preached his congregation down to nothing because he went full woke gospel, different gospel, secular progressive coward. Rick Warren was asking his entire employees to get the jab. I have the leaked email from my buddy, Pastor James Cadiz. Yeah, you know that guy. Yeah. We've had shepherds and pastors and Christian leaders in America for far too long who have traded their birthright for a bowl of porridge because they've cared more about the attaboys and accolades of the culture than faithfulness and pure and undefiled religion, which is what? Pure and undefiled religion is this: care for orphans and widows in their distress. Have you noticed the Bible sort of cares about the orphan? I don't know if you've seen that come up 1 or 2 times in the Bible. Can I tell you why, actually? From the homeschool kid that didn't get a theology master's? The orphan's life is endangered because his parents are dead. Because his parents are dead. So who's his protector? That's why the orphan's so close to the heart of the Father. So if the test of our religion even is how we care and treat for orphans because their life is endangered because their parents are dead, how much more does God care about the orphan in the womb whose life is endangered because their parents want them dead? Amen. Don't tell me the Bible's not pro-life. The unborn child meets every qualification of what God would define as an orphan. It's not political. These are biblical, theological, and spiritual issues. But of course, they manifest in the political realm. It has a political aspect to it. I read Narnia out loud to my 6-year-old last year. The Chronicles of Narnia. Go read all the dead Christian authors. You'll be way smarter than reading the next Rick Warren book or Russell Moore book or whatever new Christian coward that just wants book sales. And in The Silver Chair, the second to last book, Aslan tells Jill Pole, he says, I'm sending you down into Narnia on this adventure. You got to free the prince and break the spell and free the land. And so here are the signs I want you to remember. You're going to come across signs on your journey, and they're going to help you fulfill the job. But don't miss them. So repeat them to yourselves when you wake in the morning and when you lie down at night and when you wake in the middle of the night. It's like write it on your foreheads and on the doorposts of your home and tell it to your children, like remember, 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 remember. Jill Pole doesn't repeat the signs. She forgets them, and her forgetfulness gets her and her friends into much trouble because of it. Our forgetfulness has gotten us and the American church into much trouble. To the point now that most pastors' response to me, because I'm so extreme, or why they won't preach against this stuff is, well, I'm not political. Then you've forgotten who you are. If you think defending children and marriage and women and babies is political and not biblical, you've forgotten who you are, Pastor. Do you guys like the Bible here? Yeah. So that was my introduction. Welcome to 412 Church. I'm just kidding. Oh gosh. I'm like looking at the clock and I'm like, oh, Pastor Tim's gonna kill me. Okay. One time I went over at Downey when Pastor Jeff Johnson was still with us, and he came out like Chuck used to do. He came out and said, "Thank Brother Seth." I was like, all right, bye-bye. I was like, I went way over. I got in big trouble. Anyways. So there's this chapter called Genesis 1, and I feel like if we would just read that and believe that, like everything else would be solved. I know that's like shocking. So here's like 3 or 4 verses. Let's see if it solves the entire culture war for the entire American church in 4 verses. Genesis 1:26, and God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the livestock and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image, the imago Dei. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Oh, that's bigoted, cisgender, heteronormativity, bigotry. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. It goes on and on and on, basically like, I've actually made it all for you, and you're the peak and pinnacle of my creation. When I look at you, I say you look just like me. I've given you my image and my likeness. And so now it's all for you, so subdue the earth, which means to bring into subjugation. Fill the earth and subdue it. Be fruitful and multiply. Have a bunch of good covenant marriage sex and spit out a bunch of babies and raise little dragon slayers to slay evil and exercise dominion, actually like dominion over the earth of the things that I, your Lord, have made for you to go have fun with. It's a big playground. Now foster it, make something beautiful, be pioneers and protectors. All right, we'll check in with you later. You check in later, a bunch of like gay sex is happening and sexualization of children, so he floods the whole earth and murders everyone. Actually, God can't murder anyone. He just changes their location. He either moves them to heaven or hell. So it's not unjust for God to kill anyone because he just changes their location. He can't kill people. And so that's a fun one, right? You can use that. So, and then he puts a rainbow and says, I'll never kill you by water again. And then the rainbow becomes the symbol of the same kinds of sexually perverted activity that caused God to flood the earth in the first place. We should remind you that Satan has no original stories. He can't create. All he can do is invert, pervert, copycat, or mock that which God has already made and declared good, righteous, and holy. And then that cultural mandate we just read, those 3 or 4 verses, did you know it gets repeated verbatim to Noah? So now that y'all screwed up and you're not perfect anymore, I still want you to do that thing that I told Adam and Eve to do when they were in a perfected state. Now that you're all screwed up, can you still do the fill the earth and subdue it and be fruitful, multiply, and exercise dominion? I still want you to do that. I don't know if you know that. That's repeated to Noah. It's called the cultural mandate. Okay, check this out. Imago Dei. Oh, okay. So human beings are valuable because they bear the image of God. So don't kill babies in the name of radical feminism, and only human beings bear the image of God. So also cheeseburgers are just too good, and I love killing animals, and they don't have the image of God. So I'm going on an elk hunt in October. I'm gonna murder a huge elk in New Mexico, and put the big antlers on my wall. My wife won't let me put the antlers in the home. She said I have to buy a vacation home to put the dead animals on it, and I'm like, are you giving me permission to buy a vacation home, babe? Anyway, so it's good to kill animals because they feed you, and you shouldn't eat soy. Okay, it turns you into a soy boy. Like, don't do it. We're getting really politically incorrect today, and I'm already over time. So only human beings have the sanctity of life. It's called the image of God. Oh, right there, that was in 4 verses in the first chapter of the Bible. I guess we just solved the abortion debate. Number 2, there's only males and females. Male and female, he created them. But we had to have the mean-tweeting orange man tell us in January in an executive order that there are only males and females, and we can know that from the moment of conception. What an indictment on America that the mean-tweeting orange man with 2 failed marriages and twice divorced, 3 times married, had to tell 330 million Americans what every human being for all of human history knew up until maybe 2005. That there are only males and females. Number 3, woman was created for Adam, his helpmate, from his rib, so marriage is only a man and a woman. And how do I know this? Because Pete Buttigieg he was our transportation secretary who was solving the racist highways. He said the highways are systemic racism. No, I'm not kidding. And then he had 3 months paternity leave because his nipples were hurting. He was chest feeding. They had 2 twins. I don't know where they got them. By the way, black and brown wombs are a lot cheaper than white wombs. I'm talking about the surrogacy debate. Why am I opening up these cans of worms when I'm 2 minutes over? So how do you get babies? Because that doesn't make a baby. So you have to rent a woman's uterus as a surrogate, and it's way cheaper to rent Hispanic and black wombs than white wombs in America. This is just a fact, actually. So usually rich gay men who are, quote-unquote, married, they go try to get a minority woman's womb as cheap as possible, and then they bring the babies home, and then they say, you have 2 daddies. So that's not a marriage, and there's no such thing as gay marriage, because marriage is the comprehensive, total union of a heterosexual couple with permanent commitment to one another for the rearing of children and the good of society. And that act of coitus is so comprehensive and natural that not only do the parts go together, but it's so comprehensive that sometimes 9 months later it requires a name. And if marriage is not based on sexual complementarity and the needs of children, then there's no reason why it should only be two people at all. Do you understand? If marriage isn't man-woman, then there's no reason it should only be two. Why not three? Why not four? Why not the consenting 17-year-old with the 60-year-old man? Why not, if it's no longer structure based off of sexual complementarity? Oh, look at that. We just solved the gay marriage debate in Genesis 1. And fourth, in the marriage covenant, only in the marriage covenant, have a bunch of godly sex and then spit out little babies. And so if we don't safeguard the family and the babies in the next few years, and let's say you get Gavin Newsom in 2028 as president, Lord have mercy, church have courage, then here's how we win in the long run. We outbreed them. Now, we hope that all repent and come to saving knowledge, and we don't wish destruction on anyone, because such were some of us. That's what the Bible says, such were some of you. Don't forget where you came from in the pits that God saved you out of, amen? But the left is in a sort of real way, they are vaccinating, transing, and aborting themselves into extinction. And if it continues, no, I'm serious. Do you know who's having the most babies? Conservative Christians in America right now. So if we could just go back to get married, don't wait forever. Don't freeze your eggs so you can climb the corporate ladder, young woman. Don't do that. You'll regret it when you're 38, and then you'll have a hard time getting pregnant, and you'll wish you had started earlier. Okay? Find a young man or woman. Make sure he's not addicted to porn. If you are addicted to porn, young man in the room, come up, and we'll have pastors up here pray over you. You need to break that, and you need to get covenant eyes on your phone and put your mom or your future mother-in-law on the browser history report that gets sent out. I'm serious. If you cannot stop looking at porn, you need to take a radical measure like your future mother-in-law seeing your browsing history. As long as he's not addicted to porn and knows he's a man and isn't drinking soy milk, find him, marry him, or find her, marry her, and start spitting out children. And then raise them in the fear and admonition of the Lord as little dragon slayers and send them out to go turn the world right side up. So that's all in, oh, look at that. Did God know that we were going to be idiots who wouldn't be able to answer the question, what is a woman, and start thinking killing children is healthcare? Did he just solve every culture war issue in the first chapter of the Bible? Oh my gosh, is it that simple? How do you know that we're in a religious spiritual fight? Because the second that Roe versus Wade got overturned, when they were dressing up in handsmaid tale outfits to show how oppressed they are, so oppressed that you might have to travel the city over now to murder your kid instead of Tennessee. You're so oppressed. So Rush Limbaugh called them feminazis. And so they started interrupting church services on Sunday mornings after Roe v. Wade got overturned. What does that tell you? Who does the left believe the threat is to baby killing in the family? The blood-bought bride of Christ. And if we will remember who we are and reclaim the Genesis 1 cultural mandate, yes, preach the gospel. But before God said to go preach the gospel, please don't misunderstand. I'm not diminishing the Great Commission. But the first commandment given to the first human beings who are in a perfected state and sin has not entered the picture yet, the first thing God ever tells them is have sex and make babies. There's only men and women. I made you in my image, so only human beings have a sanctity of life. Now go to the ends of the earth and exercise dominion over all of the creation. If the church would just do that, we would turn the world right side up, like the heroes and saints who went before us. This is what we do at the White Rose Resistance. I have a staff of 25 now. We have resistance chapters all around the country. We awaken, train, mobilize, fire up, enrage, disciple, and release believers to do resistance activity around the country to shut down. We just shut down the most infamous late-term abortion mill in America in Boulder, Colorado last month. This guy's been killing babies since 1970. We just shut it down last month. His name's Warren Hearn. He started abortions in 1969. He's in his 80s. He's still killing babies in his 80s. He just shut his abortion mill last month because we've had 100 Christians out there every week for 10 months, and he just shut it down. I could give you more stories. I got to get off of here now before Tim comes and pulls me off. So if you want to help what we're doing and be part of what we're doing, scan this QR code or text White Rose to 50155. I'll be at the table in the foyer afterwards, but if you join at $35 a month, we call that an ally, and you get a bracelet that says, "In the face of evil, I stand," and you get a shirt, and you get a battle box that we ship to your house in the next 6 weeks, a battle box to turn you into pro-life ninjas, little culture Jesus warriors, and equip you for the fight, because you're the solution, actually, not my ministry. Actually, the church is the solution. And then if you join at $70 a month, we call that air support. You get a metallic white rose to remember to pray for us. You get my book, The 1916 Project, and you join our book club. We read books together every 2 months, and we talk about them live on Zoom. You hang out with me live on Zoom with these people from all around the country, and we become little Hosea 4:6 warriors. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, so seek knowledge so you're not destroyed. Oh, is it that simple? So I'll be out there to give you bear hugs or side hugs, 3 pats for the Trinity. And if you want to support us in being a part of what we're doing, it would mean a lot to me. Now, will you go out there and give them heaven? Yeah.